Cool. Good. We're live. And I'm 4 years old, in case anybody didn't know that. We just want to establish that to get things started. Welcome, everyone, to our monthly content insights analysis webinar. We'll be looking at all the things that have been trending across the LearnCube universe. My name is Bart Farrell. I'm joined by my colleague, Amit, and we have a very special guest with us today. His name is Dario Tranchitella. And if you don't know him, you should. But Dario, could you introduce yourself for people who may not know you?
Oh, he's either
Shy. He's gone shy. That's
No,
okay.
yeah, I need to change the Wi-Fi. It's not working anymore. So I guess that you asked me an introduction. So my name is Dario. I am software engineer at HAProxy Technologies, and I am responsible of the integration with Kubernetes and the cloud ecosystem. So I'm very happy to be here today.
very good. And to be Dario, it paused in a really good place because you were giving a blue steel model look. So I've definitely had Wi-Fi dropped in much more unfortunate facial impressions. So it's absolutely fine.
Perfect. Good. Well, that being said, we will dive into the slides. I'll start sharing my screen. And let's see. Let's get over here. And as usual, folks, feel free to put your questions here in the chat if there's anything you want us to go into more detail about. As we said in the beginning, we are LearnCube. So we are a collection of community of 500,000 Kubernetes engineers across all the different brands that we work with. You've probably seen our stuff on Kube events. If you're subscribed to our newsletter, if you check out the news that we have on Kube today, if you're looking for a job, you can go to Kube Careers. We've got lots of different stuff going out. I have the weekly podcast, Kube FM. Also do daily news segments, let you know about the different things that are going on in our network. As I mentioned, my name is Bart, joined by Amit, and also very lucky to have Dario with us today, who's a fantastic engineer at HAProxy. So like I said, if you haven't checked out the brands that we manage, they're listed here. And so you can dig into all the cool content that we put out across all these different networks. So what we're going to be covering in the next 30 minutes, the topics that were top trends in the last month in January, across all the different things that we're looking at. So thinking about what is this content? How is it being delivered? Is it in the form of a tutorial? Is it a GitHub repo? What kind of diagrams are being used? What are people responding to in terms of the click-through rate? And then on top of it, the topics, right? So if we're looking at networking, if we're looking at security, if we're looking at configuration management, what are people most interested right now? Why are they most interested? We want to hear from Dario as well, too, if he agrees with the trends or if he feels like there's some stuff that maybe isn't being covered, what should be there. And then, of course, we're gearing up for KubeCon Amsterdam. All three of us will be there, as well as various members of the LearnCube team. It will be sort of our on-site and off-site. Going to be doing lots and lots of interviews. Going to be doing some cool things there, so we'll let you know about our Amsterdam plans as well. That being said, Amit, over to you.
Cool, but I just want to say I can't see the slides. Slight technical.
Okay.
Up there, just
good. Let's see. Perfect. And we should be good.
Cool. Yeah, perfect. Thanks. Yeah, on to the next one, please, Bart. But yeah, like kind of a slide alludes to. So, Bart already mentioned, there's a number of different brands underneath the LearnCube name. So, it really gives us a great insight into, I suppose, the pulse of what the community are really engaging with. We can really see the different articles, different pieces of content that people are submitting, but also the readership of that, who's engaging with what, how the trend, what's trending, where the opportunities are, where we can see, high number of impressions, but very low kind of volume piece of content. So, we can really help brands and content writers and creators really kind of create some really good technical stuff. So yeah, let's dive into some of these topics. So we generally categorize, we create different categories for the different topics, and we group everything within that. And, we see different trends. And actually, last year, resource management in particular was kind of top for, a number of months. But I think we're starting to see a real diversification in terms of what people are really interacting with, which is great, because it gives other brands, other content writers and so on opportunities. But you'll see here that, configuration management and development, for example, as categories have been really popular. Infrastructure as well, but Not sure why I organise things like that, but infrastructure for whatever reason. And so, these three have performed really well. But let's just dive into that a bit further. So, Bart, if you don't mind. So yeah, as I said, infrastructure, and this is quite a strange one, because usually infrastructure, well, not infrastructure, but usually when you have a high number of impressions, the click-through rate sometimes suffers. But on this occasion, I think the click-through rate for infrastructure in particular has been really good, really strong. So there's obviously a good trend there, in terms of, yes, okay, there's a high number of impressions, but actually the content that is out there is performing really well for brands as well. So infrastructure might be poised for a comeback, because it hasn't really been in the kind of top lists for a little while. So yeah, that's the first kind of insight that we're looking at. Onwards.
Yep.
Development content. We actually had this in the last maybe 2 months. Development has slowly been creeping up the kind of, let's call it a league table, league table of different categories. I haven't yet dived into why that might be. So it might be interesting to hear from Bart, Dario, if you have kind of any insights on what your thoughts are. But, from our perspective, the impressions are good. There's a lot of people looking and wanting to look at this content. Perhaps the click-through rate and the engagement of that content isn't as good, as strong as what it could be. Certainly not as strong as what infrastructure was, which probably shows there's an opportunity to increase or improve the quality of that content. But yeah, Bart, Dario, I don't know what your thoughts are on development-based content and why it might be having its moment.
Dario, what do you think?
Yeah, I can share my thoughts about that. And I will say that I'm very biased because I've been one of the first person in my bubble, at least, to work on Kubernetes back in 2017. And it wasn't yet the de facto standard, as container orchestration. But I think that now, essentially, we have all the proofs that Kubernetes is going to be the new Java, I will say, in programming languages. So it means that even though it's not a programming language, but infrastructure management, now the developers, they need to develop cloud native applications, and Kubernetes is the right tool to have that cloud portability. So cloud native is absolutely a standard. And in the end, I think there is a sort of transformation. So maybe the old developers, they were saying, no, Kubernetes is just, a hype. Now we have the proof that is here to stay forever, I will say, unless we have a new technology. So it's the transition. So essentially, we crossed the chasm of the innovation. So all the late movers are now migrating over to Kubernetes.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. I know sometimes we like to think that 2017 wasn't that long ago, but as a 40-year-old, it was almost 10 years ago. And so, like you said, there was that transition point where, Kubernetes wasn't the only option. Apache Mesos was a strong option for a lot of folks out there. And then, Kubernetes very much won the container orchestration wars. And so naturally, as a result, like you said, that that we are seeing this trend of late joiners that are now getting more fluent in the Kubernetes world, and so shifting over to development. I would like to touch on one thing as well, Dario. I'm sure you're probably a little tired about hearing about AI, but if we look at both development and infra, and from the AI perspective, do you think that has anything to do with it?
Well, I don't know, honestly, but I'm one of those guys that are not jaded about the AI. I mean, I think that it's very powerful. So it's very great, especially in the development. And I will say that Kubernetes is perfect. It's the right choice if you want to deploy AI LLMs or you want to deploy agents, because essentially it's the right tool. So it could be rated, but it depends. In the end, correlation is not causation. Who knows?
Fair play. All right,
Nice.
good.
Correlation.
Let's keep moving.
Yeah, let's keep moving. Very good. Security. So we've seen a pretty strong trend with security, I think, over the past several months. The last kind of trend or shift we had was security really had an awareness moment, but then really moved into kind of action and people wanted walkthroughs, guides, and so on, because they'd gone from reading the theory around things to really wanting to implement. And security as a category goes from strength to strength, and with a really strong click-through rate in terms of the kind of content that is out there, but a relatively low number of impressions, one shows that there probably isn't enough good security-based content out there, from what we're seeing across our community at least. But the demand is really high, and I've started looking at some of the demand, and I think a lot of it is due to I've started looking at some of the click-through rate and some of the cause of having a strong click-through rate, and much of it is to do with the type of content, walkthroughs, things that people can really follow, but I haven't quite yet finished that investigation. So again, Bart, Dario, it'd be interesting to see what you guys might know that perhaps I don't, and might be able to share why security might be really engaging, or why people are clicking on that content.
I have my bias, but I will say that maybe it's also related to the astonishing amounts of CVEs that we're witnessing these days, especially with the deprecation of Nginx ingress. I always make a lot of confusion. It should be ingress Nginx. It should be ingress Nginx. So the default ingress controller that has been retired because maintaining that was too much, overwhelming, and they had also several CVEs. So in the end, we took for granted, some infrastructure components. We expected to be secure enough, or at least with zero problems. But reality is that you can't trust something from the community. So in the end, again, we are here saying, okay, we are using from the open source, but we need to be sure that everything is working. And I will say that that's the reason why you see also this spike in regards of security. Mm-hmm. And last but not least, also maybe it's also about the latest trend about Cyber Resiliency Act in Europe. I don't know, that could be also related. So more evangelization regarding the security supply chain, zero CVE, container images, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. So it's almost like people are really, to your points, versus other categories. People, there's lots of different changes in the ecosystem community that are driving it, but at the same time, security is something that people really, really need to pay attention to. So, if they are seeing something, they're seeing something in terms of a good piece of content, they are clicking on it because their interest is driven by a much higher need, that they really need to understand certain things. So yeah, they're good points. But I don't know if you're seeing anything else, but otherwise we'll move on.
Keep going. Good.
Cool. So highest click-through rate content. Here's a I suppose a small sample of high-performing pieces of content that we've seen over the past month, and there's a really high propensity in terms of the number of walkthroughs and especially tool overviews. And I think these are essentially pieces of content that aren't just they're not just opinion pieces. They're not they're obviously not driving a certain or specific product. That's not really what our community really go for. They look for problem and solution orientated stuff, and I think that really proves this, because here we're actually readers are really appreciating that practical guidance where they can really follow something, they can follow something through, and that's something really valuable for them. But then also new tooling. And I have to say, I know less about new tooling, so I'll come on to that with Dario and Bart in a second. But I think with the walkthroughs, we're seeing a really consistent feel for this. So, if you are a brand creating technical content, it doesn't all need to be a specific walkthrough, but let's say you're creating an ebook, you can slice and dice that piece of content to have a walkthrough, go through whether it's a technical webinar or whether you're creating another guide or written piece of content. You can walk through specific areas, so I'd really encourage people to do that. And I don't know, and I suppose this is a bit of a loaded question to the both of you as well. I don't know if it's because maybe we're seeing we notice at KubeCon there's a lot of newcomers as well to the space and to the community, and I don't know if these walkthroughs are perhaps in particular, they're really useful for these new individuals who are coming because they need that kind of step-by-step hand-holding through what can be seen as quite a complicated space, especially you're coming to it, you see all the products, you see open source, you see CNCF, it can be quite confusing. So that might be a reason as well. Just before I kind of move on, opinion pieces have always been really popular, but also the kind of controversial opinion pieces we always find, and I think Bart from Kube as well, things that really do perform well is when someone does have a more controversial opinion. So I think if you are sitting on controversial opinions, do share them. Don't be afraid to share them. But yeah, over to you guys. I don't know what you think about kind of those 3 points there.
Dario, give us a hot take. Share a controversial opinion.
Oh my gosh.
No, it's okay. Don't worry.
No. That's fine. I can do that. No worries. Just call that. So I will say the first one, it's about GPU-based container as a service, mostly because we are always consuming AI, but nobody's creating real AI. So that's the reason why so many people are looking for this kind of walkthrough, because they don't know what to build with the GPUs. So that's my controversial take. But I'm not joking. I think that reality is that interacting with this kind of material is very helpful because you need to get a different perspective. So in the end, sometimes we are just too used to say, okay, I have the tutorial, I want to set up, just thinking out loud, Fluxity. So it's application delivery, but application delivery is just one of the implementation. Instead, having a sort of guide or step-by-step guide saying, I want to create something from scratch in this way, you have also a different view of the technology. So you're not focusing anymore just on the technology, but on real use cases, because it's like, crafting something. So it's not like industrial creation, but it's just like craftsmanship, essentially. I don't know if you, Bart, agrees on that.
What I would definitely go along with is, that we are talking about a space that, while it has the maturity, like you said, of, people in your case been working with it, since 2017, there's still a lot of gaps. And I think that's also why, there can be the strong opinions around things because of the lack of certainty, and having to have, trust and the confidence of moving forward with something. But I want to ask you something, Dario, is that when you're looking for something about a new technology, what are the kind of things that you value in a walkthrough or a tutorial? Or what are the things that you find beneficial, or the stuff that's going to catch your attention?
It's very hard also because, it's like trying to organize a conference. I'm also one of the co-organizers of Cloud Native Days in Italy, and also picking up the talks is very complicated because you have 3 tiers of simplicity. So entry level, middle, and expert. And I will say that at some point, the middle one could be too much, it's not so good for newbies, but maybe it's not too much technical deep dive as the experts are expecting. So in the end, if we take a look also to KubeCon's talks selected, essentially, the stories are always preferred because you can learn from real world case scenarios. So trying to answer your question and trying to don't look like I'm avoiding to reply to that one, I will say that use cases and real stories are my favorites. I remember also some talks from different KubeCons back in the day. They were about outages. So I love outages. So trying to read the postmortems, because when you're living the disaster, of course you're stressed out a lot. But afterwards you're saying, it was that simple. I don't have any stress, but I remember because when I was on call and you see pager duty or all the notifications lag, of course you are getting stressed. And those are the best, because when you're under stress, you can learn a lot. So sharing the knowledge is absolutely gold.
And we find that a lot too, actually, with the podcast, is that the stories from people can tell us about when something broke, when there was a nightmare scenario where all of a sudden 3 people are troubleshooting something and they're in 3 different countries, time zones, etc., at very odd hours, and trying to figure out what's going wrong. I think people really respond to that well. There's the emotional part, there's a very human factor and a very technical context. And I think people relate to that very well. So whether it's in articles or in talks and events, like Cloud Native Days in Italy or KCDs all across the world, I think people do respond to that very well. And also because of the humility and vulnerability involved in that is saying, hey, we're not going to say everything's perfect. And so that we're asking people in those interviews in the podcast about, for people that find themselves in a similar situation in the future, what would you recommend? Things are going to break. Things will go wrong. Not everything's perfect. I think in particular topics, sometimes, for example, when we're speaking about security, how many people are going to want to go in KubeCon and say, this is how we got hacked and, had to hand over, $2 million because of ransomware? Probably not many. But, with other things where maybe it's not so sensitive regarding the things that would be shared, I think that that can play a role there. But it's very nice to hear from you directly about the kind of stuff you value. I think the data sort of speaks for itself too, that other people in the community find that valuable as well. So that's good. Let's shall we move on to the next slide?
Let's do it.
All right.
Oh, so key trends and insights. Twitter's been doing some strange things, or I should say X, really. So
Get ready for a strong opinion from Dario.
Yeah, oh, I look forward to it. I'll make this quick then, because the algorithm, the usage data has been doing weird things. Let's just put it that way. We don't know what it is yet because it's only been isolated to a month. But I'm excited for Dario's opinion, so maybe I should move over. Are you not an X lover?
Yeah, I was trying to say that essentially. I don't know what is Twitter. I mean, so 2017. I don't remember honestly, but I don't want to talk about politics. But yeah, I will say that maybe it's also about the community. So essentially, the cloud native community is a very good one with right person, right people. I don't want to talk about politics, but in the end, I would say that there is a sort of correlation. Now, before I said correlation is not causation, but now I see a correlation. So I don't think it's about the algorithm, but who knows? I remember that I used to do a lot of memes on Twitter, also on LinkedIn, and I'm not doing that anymore. So maybe that's the reason, because I stopped doing memes. I remember that I met Bart because he loved my memes about Kubernetes Cloud Native.
They're really good.
Bring back the memes. I think you're probably right there. I think it's changing. It's no longer Twitter, it's X, which I think is that change. But I'll fly through these. We've already said development content's rising, security content consistently drives most clicks, and podcast listenership is really growing. We're seeing that. I don't want to make Bart's head too
Yes,
big.
you do. Yes, you do.
Kube FM, is a really strong brand, distributes some great content for us. So for us, we're seeing podcast listenership really grow. Over to you, Bart, for conclusion and recommendations.
Yeah. So as we are getting closer to KubeCon, for people that are out there that are creating content, that are going to be sharing their stories, as Dario mentioned as well, if you're giving a talk in KubeCon, make sure to put, some of the human element in there about the things that you've gone through to give that first person experience. Be honest, share the things that worked, the things that didn't work. People respond to this really well. Everybody knows that not everything's, 100% perfect. So that's totally fine. In terms of the people that, what we're seeing, development content, does seem to be quite strong. And once again, getting close to KubeCon, a lot of people that are going for the first time, some of them do come from a developer background, and are getting involved in this. And so, keeping that in mind. Regarding what we saw around security, this has been a trend that Amit and I have been seeing for the last, since we've been doing these webinars now for about a year. We have seen that security had not always been at the top, and we've also seen security overlapping with other topics like GitOps at different points in time to see, that, but it does seem that there is a demand for good security content, and people, are eager to have that. And then, as we mentioned as well about infrastructure engagement as well, being more popular. Dario, what trends do you feel like aren't getting enough coverage? And on top of that, what do you expect to be hearing about in this upcoming KubeCon that's going to be in Amsterdam in just a few weeks?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, I'm biased because I work for HAProxy, but what we're seeing is that, the concept of service mesh is emerging again. we took for granted that you can do service mesh, but by working with several HAProxy customers and also with the community, and especially considering what happened in the latest trends about networking in Kubernetes, essentially, I will say that networking is missing here. So a lot of drama. I witnessed a lot of drama with the ingress deprecation, more or less. It's not a proper deprecation, but it's a rise of the gateway API. And a lot of people, they started saying, should we go gateway API? Can we keep the ingress controller? I need to migrate away from ingress and Nginx. So that was one of the topics that I was overwhelmed on Reddit. I was overwhelmed also on LinkedIn and so on and so forth. So maybe it's the drama for deprecations. And regarding that, of course, I'm biased because HAProxy is taking care of that. But I saw it's not only HAProxy, but also other vendors, other solutions. Essentially, they started pushing a lot to keep their customers covered. So essentially, maintaining the ingress controllers or providing a sort of solution where essentially you can play with ingress controller, but also with gateway API. So not forcing the people to migrate because it's the latest trend. Sometimes, it will be great if you could migrate to the latest technology, but we know that in reality, we have also some technical debt and we can't be very quick like in theory. And it's what we are doing also at HAProxy, essentially. We are very strong now in the open source. We started a plan where we are giving back to the open source like HAProxy as we did, but also with the cloud native community. We have HAProxy Universal Gateway, and it supports Gateway API, but it will support also Ingress API just to avoid forcing the customers or the adopters to say, I need to upgrade. So TLDR, it's the drama about the networking in Kubernetes.
Drama about networking in Kubernetes. Get your popcorn and talk to people that are invested in networking. Like you said, these changes do affect organizations. And if you fail to plan, then plan to fail. So there needs to be something in place to be able to respond to this. And I think, there was a bit of, more than a bit of concern for quite a few folks out there. And so I imagine that the conversations, like you said, will continue into KubeCon when we all see each other in person in Amsterdam. And like I said, just a couple of weeks. Well, Dario, thank you very much for sharing your time, knowledge, and experience today. Next time we will have to ask you for a meme. That was a mistake on my part. We'll have to bring you out of meme retirement. People are always asking me when I'm going to rap again. I will start rapping again if you start memeing again. We'll leave it at that. And Amit, I don't know what kind of special talent you're going to have to share, but you'll have to think of something. Good.
Oh, that's sad, isn't it?
Arsenal trivia.
Arsenal tears.
Yeah, that's good. Well, like I said, Dario, thank you very much. I really look forward to hanging out with you in Amsterdam and the other cool folks from HAProxy that will be there. And yeah, it's going to be an intense week as always with lots of different things going on. We'll let folks know about our schedules. Dario, are you giving a talk or are you going to be doing anything in KubeCon?
No, unfortunately, no, because it's very hard trying to get a talk accepted at KubeCon, but I'll have a talk at a co-located event. I don't know if I can promote that, but you can figure out on LinkedIn. You just type my name and co-located event, and you will find that. Yeah.
We will do that. We'll hopefully be able to see you there in person, and if not, we'll see you somewhere else during that time in Amsterdam. We will probably try to get one of these webinars in before KubeCon to share the insights from February. But you can always find these on Kube today. All these things are available if you want to dig into the data and see for yourself. What we gave today was just a summary. But if you want to dig into that more, these things are coming out every month, so you can see all the stuff that's going on there. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Talk to you soon. Take care.
Bye-bye. Ciao.
Cheers.